one could realistically pull off. Basically, he uses a fake leg with some straightforward misdirection. He uses pants that allow him to hook the fake leg up to his other one while he puts his now free foot onto an elevated surface. Not so impressive now, huh? Chris uses a lot of time to build up the suspense of the act and uses his spectators' gullibility to his advantage. If you get the angle right and ensure that nobody looks too closely, you're good to go. The more advanced version of this trick, however, involves more than a spare shoe, a stick, and a pair of fancy pants. It's the one where he hovers dozens of feet in the air above amazed spectators viewing him from below. The entire thing is, of course, captured on video from both buildings and the street, offering views that clearly show that he isn't being suspended by anything other than the power of magic. This relies on cables, camera angles, and some carefully placed, crisp $100 bills. We can be sure that Mr. Angel isn't a tightrope walker, although we would be far more impressed with him if he were to take that route. What is more probable of an outcome is that he hooked himself up to a crane or some kind of scaffolding, with the adorning spectators below being little more than paid actors or lucky passerby who have signed a confidentiality agreement, along with cashing in on those aforementioned Benjamins. At least he's not currently in the middle of a vicious lawsuit based on one of his tricks, like the next big name on our list. Number 4. David Copperfield. If you haven't heard about David Copperfield, then you definitely missed his big scandal back in 2013, and we're here to catch you up. While the injury of an audience member isn't the way we'd like to get the inside scoop on one of his biggest tricks, we're certainly gonna run with it. That being said, we do wish Gavin Cox and his family all the best and hope that he's able to make an eventual recovery from his terrible onstage injury. At the very least, we think Copperfield should step up and take ownership for his mistake and agree that his people were far too rough with bewildered and innocent participants who had no clue what was happening to them ahead of time. At this point, given the circumstances, compensation wouldn't hurt either. The ongoing court case centers on Copperfield's disappearing audience trick, which led to Mr. Cox sustaining permanent brain damage when he was trampled on stage during a live show. Copperfield starts the show by tossing 13 inflatable balls into the audience. Once his 13 lucky contestants are called on stage, they're shuffled into a cage of all things, and each given a high-powered flashlight to shine directly at the rest of the crowd. At about this point, David's own stage lights get cranked up a notch and help to completely dazzle the rest of the audience, who remain blissfully unaware of the pandemonium happening above them as the cage is then covered with an enormous blanket. We don't know about you, but we think adding a cover just kills the trick right there. If he could manage to scurry his caged quarry out through the secret passageway located at the back of the cage while they kept their lights trained on the audience, we'd probably be impressed, but adding flashlights for show while covering the cage anyway isn't necessary. Once through the passageway, his chosen guinea pigs are meant to line up on stage, revealing an empty cage and smiling fans. Problem is that there's just no oversight, and it's downright dangerous to create a mad dash for the exit in a suspended death trap. Maybe he can pull off the greatest trick of his career and make this lawsuit go away, but we doubt he's anywhere near that good. The comment from Copperfield's people so far? The history of the show speaks for itself. We deny all allegations. Unfortunately, we cannot comment further due to ongoing litigation. Sure, guys. Number 3. Houdini. You knew it was coming, and we really couldn't let you down. There's no way we could put together a lineup of famous magicians and not include Houdini, after all. His name is a household one all across the world, and just about everyone knows and loves his most popular acts. His tragic death, the result of a regular trick of his gone awry, helped to cement his name as a performer who literally lived and died by his trade. But we're choosing to focus on one of his earlier acts. This simple trick helped put him on the map and skyrocket him to celebritydom. We're talking about Houdini's famed metamorphosis trick, first performed by the man in 1894. While this was a play on a trick that he had done before, Houdini made it his own by using his own wife in the act. It became a sensation and helped transform how people saw magicians. Binding his hands and sealing himself in a knotted sack, Houdini was then placed in a chest which was itself locked and sealed shut. The entirety of this was then placed, Houdini, sack, chest and all, inside a cupboard with a curtain drawn across the front. His wife, Bessie, would then step into the cupboard, close the curtain, and clap 3 times. Upon the 3rd clap, the curtain would snap open, revealing Houdini, who would then demonstrate that he and his wife had exchanged places, with her hands bound in the same sack, bearing the same knot, in the same chest, still locked up and sealed tight. This intricate trick was the one that caught the attention of the Welsh Brothers Circus, who quickly snapped up the pair and brought them on tour in 1895. The secret to this remarkable trick is actually quite simple, given the seeming complexity of the overall act. First of all, his hands were bound by a knot that was simple to escape from. Once he was in the sack, he quickly loosed his hands. The rope binding the sack itself was actually fed inside, allowing Houdini to loosen it with a swift tug as the chest, complete with an escape hatch in the back, was initially being locked. As soon as the curtain was closed, Houdini popped out and clapped his hands while letting the audience think that the phantom claps came from Bessie, who would already be wriggling into the sack, which was then pushed right back through the escape hatch. While all this seems straightforward, the real trick is getting the timing right, which would have taken an immense amount of practice. What impressed people most was the speed at which the husband and wife duo carried out the trick. Being a husband and wife duo also presumably helped endear themselves to the crowds a little too. Number 2, David Blaine. We know he's creepy as sin, but it's undeniable that David Blaine has a great stage presence. Leaning on a bit of an unnecessary but still relatively light goth/overgrown scene kid vibe, Blaine likes to dazzle sidewalk audiences with impressive sleights of hand and astounding card tricks. Sleight of hand is a staple of every card junkie, petty thief, and high school entertainer, but he does a better job at it than most. What we think is somewhat underrated is how he further applied his skills to a standard deck of 52 playing cards. It really does take a lot of work to be as casual as Blaine seems to be, and we think that David's shrinking deck trick is definitely worth a breakdown. The trick begins with forcing his chosen audience member to pick an innocuous black card. After this forced card is picked, using any number of established and well-known methods, he has them reveal it, then place it back in the deck. Blaine snaps the back, instantly shrinking the deck and revealing that all the black cards have been removed except for the one the audience member chose. To pull this off, he only uses 27 cards instead of 52 to begin with, holding them carefully while applying pressure briefly to help fan the cards out and makes the deck look full. Once the only black card initially present is placed in the seemingly full deck, he simply layers them all together again to reveal the supposedly diminished card count. Number 1, Nigel Harrison. Coming in at number 1, we couldn't help ourselves and had to include an homage to everybody's favorite TV magician. Illusionist. You know how the Alliance of Magicians rolls. Job might not impress anyone other than his brother Buster, but he does make some solid half-hearted attempts to get some laughs out of his audience. We wanted to bring one of his most iconic tricks back into the real world and offer up an actual example of the time that Nigel Harrison made an actual boat disappear. In the trick, the video of which is available online, he's followed by a cameraman as he finishes his preparations. Featuring a massive ferry from Ontario's Gananoque boat line and a group of blindfolded participants on board, this rain-soaked video is a great example of showmanship. Nigel starts by explaining that the footage is unedited and shot in a single take. As the cameraman follows him around, he runs back and forth to check that the lines are secure and then scampers up the bank away from the boat. Up there, we have a couple of guys waiting with an empty picture frame, which is then centered and covered. Nigel then uncovers the frame, revealing that the boat has vanished. With certain lighting and optical effects, along with good old-fashioned misdirection, he manages to completely hide the boat from the camera's view, even dashing back to the dock after he finishes his big reveal to show that it is in fact gone. At least, that's what he wants you to believe. Dimming certain lights while raising others above the top of the boat helps to obscure the area just enough to cover the boat in darkness. While we're not sure exactly what material he used, we know that he managed to pull the boat off just far enough off the dock to avoid the stage light's glare and covered it with a large light-absorbing screen with his, wait for it, 40-plus person crew. Pulling the boat off the dock would be as easy as installing pulleys or using a smaller craft on the far side. side. We expected it was both. If we had a group like that to do our bidding, we're sure we could pull off some pretty spectacular stunts, especially if they aren't actually done live. Kudos does go out to Nigel because while we're pretty sure we've got him figured out, we still haven't been able to pull all the pieces together just yet. If you have any further insight into this disappearing boat act, feel free to add it to the discussion below. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. The forest can be a wonderful place to get back in touch with nature. With their serene beauty, forests inspire thoughts of relaxation. For all their benefits, however, forests can still be daunting places. Once the sun goes down, this can turn into a general foreboding, with danger seemingly lurking around every corner. Artists everywhere, including writers and producers, love engaging yet terrifying forest scenes. With so much space to hide, forests are a perfect haven for criminals and weirdos. From the psychopath to the hermit, forests are a good place to disappear if you don't want to be found. This adds a certain level of creepiness. Furthermore, there have been some very strange things found in forests that only add to their mystery. To help clear things up, we've compiled a list of the 5 strangest things found in the forest. Let's begin. Number 5. Mystery Sphere. Dr. Samir Osmanagic believes that a series of immense iron balls dotting the landscape around Bosnia in Eastern Europe could be some of the oldest made by humans. If his claim is true, then one of the greatest archaeological finds in recent history could be sitting undisturbed in the unassuming landscape of Bosnia. These immense boulders, supposedly carved by human hands around 1500 years ago, are, according to Osmanagic, evidence that the area conceals a long-forgotten civilization that included underground tunnels serving to connect a number of pyramids. While this far-fetched claim begins to touch on the absurd by the time we get to talk of pyramids, the balls are still no less intriguing. They were found to contain an extremely high iron content, much more than anything found in the surrounding landscape, and seem to have been carved by humans a very long time ago. Other than that, not much is known about these strange spheres. It's said that there used to be many more of them dotting the countryside, hundreds even. Almost all of these have now been destroyed after stories spread to locals suggesting they contained gold. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, and now there are much less of the strange objects left to study. We can't fault them for it, but perhaps if we had more to study, we could come to some kind of consensus. The country also suffered through being on the front line of some incredibly intense and brutal wars and engagements throughout recent history, which could also account for the destruction of these fascinating objects. While many doubt Osmanagic's wild and admittedly ludicrous claims of massive and ancient cities gazing out across an expanse of pyramids in Bosnia's past, archaeologists across the globe can all agree that they're definitely worth looking into for their seeming historical significance. Anthropologists in the area have also been eager to posit theories regarding the sphere's creators, with many claiming them to be a lost tribe of nomads who accidentally found themselves lost far from home, but none have any real supporting evidence as of yet. Opposition to the near-complete agreement that these are man-made has even been stated, with some concrete evidence to back it up, in a manner of speaking. It turns out that the process of, you guessed it, concretion was given as evidence and holds a surprising amount of weight. Not that these massive boulders need any more of that. Even though the origins of these stones remains hotly debated, they are a magnificent sight and do look very man-made. Number 4. Nazi tree formations. This group of trees lay completely forgotten about in Zernikow until 1992, when aerial photographs accidentally captured the spectacle. The swastika has a long history that predated the Nazis by centuries. It was originally used by ancient Indians, among many other cultures, and symbolized prosperity in their culture. It became an image of evil and hatred after it was adopted by Hitler's Nazi party when he took control of Germany and began his murderous campaign of terror. Apparently, someone was a fan of his in the area and took it upon themselves to plant these trees designed to display 2 enormous swastikas every year when the seasons change. Given the history involved, that's an incredibly creepy discovery. After Germany's fall, it's remarkable that this went unnoticed by the world for so long. Even more disturbing is that it took numerous attempts to clear the forest and remove the stain from the landscape. After these unsuccessful attempts, with the forest growing back each time, the government finally removed only a portion of the trees in order to obscure the swastika. Their attempts were still fruitless for the most part, with the sign still being relatively visible. The trees even give a date under the 2 symbols, making it clear that a lot of work was put into this. The date even gives it the feel of a memorial, which certainly sends chills up our spines when we think about it. Amazingly, this is not the only time a forest has been branded in this way. Nazi supporters really were a band of raving lunatics, and these displays prove as much. It also goes to show that these people had far too much time on their hands. If they'd spent less time uprooting trees to make shapes and spent more getting to work, then maybe Germany wouldn't have been in such a rough spot to begin with. Forests across the area show similar color-changing features, with another notable site located in Kyrgyzstan at the base of the Himalayas. Many have suggested that these were projects constructed by the Hitler Youth, but evidence shows that it was probably just a few nutjobs wasting time while being terrible human beings to boot. Number 3. Real-life Mowgli. This girl is hailed as a modern-day Jungle Book character. Her upbringing certainly was, at the very least, unconventional. It's surprising that this item didn't make more waves around the world, as its implications are pretty astounding. It turns out that a young girl in India was found to be living in Katerniyagat Forest and Wildlife Sanctuary, existing as part of a tribe of monkeys. While the boy in Rudyard Kipling's classic tale was instead raised by wolves, the similarities are uncanny. It seems like the child was abandoned by her human parents only to be found by the troop, which quickly adopted her. The girl was rescued, as officials like to say, by police after being spotted by concerned citizens. The police, however, had to launch multiple attempts to bring the girl in because every time they approached, the monkeys would attack the police in order to protect her. Even more incredible is that she appeared to be carefree and unconcerned about her supposed predicament. She was also found to be relatively healthy. When first discovered by woodcutters, the girl apparently screeched at them like a monkey and resisted all attempts to coax her back to civilization. Originally determined to be between 8 and 12 years old, nobody is sure how long she actually spent under the care of the troop. Given her aggressive nature and complete assimilation into the monkey society, it was assumed that she was probably raised from a young child. Experts have agreed that she probably had sustained human contact before she joined the troop, with many claiming that she probably hadn't been there too long and was only recently abandoned. Signs of mental illness could be a clue as to why she was abandoned, but while she is currently toilet trained, she still can't speak. Hopefully she will, in time, be able to recount her unique and strange tale. Number 2. Crooked Forest. The trees in this forest make for surprisingly nice chairs, but do lend the place an atmosphere that suggests hooded figures wielding axes, intent on efficiently removing your limbs in no particular order. Even so, there's a haunting beauty to the place. Furthermore, nobody knows what happened to the trees here. One would be mysterious enough, but to be surrounded by strange, sea-stumped trees in such abundance is even more so. This 80-year-old forest is most definitely strange. It seems that some event during the early formation of this forest damaged the tips and some side branches of sprouting trees, but nothing is really known for certain. There is other evidence that points toward these 22 rows of almost identical trees being planted in order to farm later for specialized parts. This process, which produces compass timbers, could be the reason for these deformities and used to be routine when it came to shipbuilding and other industries. What makes this explanation so puzzling would be that someone started a large-scale project only to abandon it relatively quickly. Even more strange is that no news is spread of anyone taking on such a project in the area. Some of this mystery is due to the fact that local inhabitants aren't all that local after all. The nearby town of Grafino was completely razed during World War II and wasn't resettled until the 1970s. This aptly explains why nobody knows the true origin of the Crooked Forest. One final theory posits that a natural disaster, potentially a freak winter storm, knocked the entire forest over. If this is the case, it's a testament to the resilience of these incredible and strange trees. We'll probably never know the real reason behind the awkwardly shaped trees, but we'll definitely not one for outlandish theories in the years to come. Number 1. Amazon Glyphs. These glyphs, discovered in the Amazon, cover a fairly wide expanse of territory. Over 450 have been discovered, and some are absolutely enormous. This discovery is an odd one because we've previously thought that the Amazon was too dense for humans to have undertaken large-scale removal of trees to carve out immense settlements and spaces. If proven to be true, this could throw into question everything we know about the civilizations that used to occupy the area. The most important change would be with regard to how we view their engineering capabilities. These projects would have taken a massive amount of labor, preparation, and cost to complete. We know that these civilizations were quite advanced, but this suggests they were incredibly skilled at altering their landscape on an unprecedented scale. The glyphs reach a good 13 feet deep and represent a number of geometric shapes and some that are more abstract. Anthropologists have determined that these sites were probably ancient meeting places, potentially used for spiritual or religious purposes. Not much evidence has been found to suggest that they were used often. This points towards them being used infrequently. The area also shows extensive cultivation was carried out here, with huge swaths of the forest being cut back to suit the growing communities. Previous data made it look like these advancements were made much more recently, which gave us a misguided sense of what these people were capable of. Even though these glyphs have revealed so much interesting information that will no doubt employ archaeologists and anthropologists for a few decades, they still don't explain much of it at all. Experts are still just as stumped as they first were as to what these formations were actually used for or how they were constructed. Further investigation is currently ongoing with the hope of shedding light on some of the more strange aspects of these amazing glyphs. The fact that so little evidence of actual human habitation has been found so far hampered progress and presents some very real issues when it comes to narrowing things down. We've got our fingers crossed that they were made by an as yet unknown advanced tribe of the Amazon. Only time will tell when it comes to these incredibly strange and mysterious forests scattered across the globe. And there, you have 5 strangest things found in the forest. These strange places just go to show that some fascinating things can be found if you dare to venture far enough. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like and share it, and if you haven't already, subscribe down below to get notified every single day with new videos from Top 5's finest. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we are out. The world has been inhabited by some strange creatures, with more being discovered with each passing day. So much remains to be discovered here on Earth, with so many odd species still living and even more bizarre fossils buried beneath the surface. Today, we're bridging the gap between legend and reality, with 5 cryptids that might actually exist in real life. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Nymphs and Dryads. Nymphs and Dryads are basically one and the same. They also have many of the same characteristics and are said to inhabit the same environments, but do have some slight differences in folklore. Forests, streams, and anywhere with trees in abundance are longtime favorites, with dryads supposedly being fond of oak trees. It goes without saying that dryads would probably be found in forests, as they're said to actually gravitate to one special tree in particular and are not found further than a few dozen meters away from it. Nymphs are traditionally more mobile and not confined to any particular space. They've been said to inhabit caves in some circumstances as well. While no studies have been done that have proven either species could possibly exist in real life, we think that there are enough sightings to suggest that it's at least worth considering. Nymphs, as we mentioned earlier, aren't forced to stay in one spot, but all the lore available does suggest that they don't stray too far from home no matter what. Being traditionally incredibly shy and wary of humans, if these creatures were around, you can be sure that they wouldn't want to be found. Humans aren't the most historically accepting group, and we do have a long tradition of attempting to wipe out all other life. It goes without saying that if these mythical creatures have been around as long as people say, they should know full well that it's in their best interest to stay out of sight. It's also said that dryads can literally step into their own tree if cornered to effectively disappear from prying eyes. Many people have claimed to surprise them, with the wood sprites then promptly taking off before a proper shot can be captured. This being the case, getting good footage can be a struggle, but isn't unheard of. Lots of possible footage has been taken, but so far not much has actually been substantiated. Most of it is grainy or blurry, although you can't really expect these spry and nimble entities would give up their likeness without putting up a fight. We're keeping our fingers crossed that they might actually exist in one way, shape, or form, but the jury's still out on this one. Number 4. Unicorns. And so we come to unicorns. The actual mythical creatures are said to have a wide variety of abilities depending on what group you talk to. Healing powers and the ability to fly feature most, but one thing that all unicorns have in common are their unique horns that are perched, much like a narwhal, right in the middle of their forehead. Unlike the narwhal, however, we all know that unicorns don't exist. Furthermore, we've been pretty sure that nothing like a unicorn actually roamed the Earth. Until recently. A new discovery has provided a lot of evidence to suggest that our ancestors may have lived alongside animals that are eerily similar to the unicorns of legend. The Siberian unicorn was thought to have lived anywhere between 29,000 and 360,000 years ago. The original number was way up at 360,000 years ago, but a new discovery has suggested that they were actually around much more recently. A preserved skull located in Kazakhstan was dated and found to be only 29,000 years old. Elasmotherium sibiricu, the scientific name for the Siberian unicorn, does have a certain magical ring to it as well. It is thought that these beasts inhabited Eastern Europe and Asia, although it is distinctly possible that they covered much larger expanses. The fact that they undoubtedly lived around the same time as early humans means that it is also absolutely possible that stories of these creatures have been passed down in a game of telephone dating back thousands of years. Spoken stories could easily have morphed the physiologies of these admittedly rhinoceros-looking beasts into the sleek, beautiful creatures that we have come to know as unicorns. Number 3. Sea serpents. These creatures have captured the imaginations of sailors and landlubbers alike since people first started exploring the open seas. These fearsome environments are not for the faint of heart, with plenty of superstitions passed down along the ages. Sea serpents have always been one of these and have been the topic of many stories. These days, many people also claim to have seen lake monsters that rival some of the largest that supposedly dwell in our oceans. This enormous beast was spotted in the waters off Catalina Island in California and seems to be enormous. A lot of people have pointed out that it's probably a massive oarfish that is expected to measure over 30 feet long. While not technically a serpent, oarfish do have many of the same characteristics and also have a narrow, elongated body, hence their name. They do not feed on the sea floor and are usually found looking for a snack closer to the surface. Oarfish inhabit temperate oceans all over the world and can be found in a wide variety of habitats. Furthermore, the giant oarfish is the longest bony fish alive. Could be that all those sailors who initially started the sea serpent rumors had actually just run into a massive giant oarfish or something else equally as large and impressive. These relatively mysterious creatures also usually have extremely large eyes, which would certainly be incredibly unsettling for anyone who happened upon one without any prior warning. It goes without saying that people back in the day weren't quite as hip to these type of creatures when we first started navigating around the world, and as we mentioned earlier, sailors aren't the most grounded group of individuals. they were constantly seeing things like mermaids, serpents, and other biblical nightmares. When you consider the fact that these groups of men were also completely convinced for a very long time that they ran a real danger of sailing off the ends of the earth, it's no wonder they invented fantastical tales of murderous serpents. These guys also spent a lot of time in the baking heat, so their imaginations probably got the better of them by the time they returned to port with their larger-than-life stories. Who knows what they really saw when looking overboard, but we think it's a safe bet that the oarfish was at least one of the main inspirations for the sea serpent myths. With potential lengths of over 30 feet, all it would take would be for one group to see a larger oarfish in the water next to their ship, and the rest would just spiral from there. We've also heard plenty of stories regarding oarfish dying and then drifting ashore, which would make any overly religious and less scientifically minded community dumb-stricken and terrified. Number 2. Chupacabra. We've mentioned chupacabras before in a number of other videos, but this particular video is bound to send chills up your spine or haunt your dreams for the next little while. Unofficially identified as a type of a hairless Malaysian bear, this animal would do some serious damage if anyone ever let it out of its cage. Just look at that ferocity and those ridiculous teeth when they're bared. We couldn't help but notice, however, that it looks eerily similar to what chupacabras are expected to look like, albeit a little smaller than average. Could be that this is a juvenile or infant chupacabra, or some other close relative. If they really do exist in real life, we really don't know all that much about these elusive creatures. Furthermore, we really wouldn't be able to say for sure if it's a real-life cryptid unless we were able to conduct further tests, which is unlikely to happen at this point. Given that not much has been heard about the supposed goat sucker since this video was released at least a couple of years ago, we can probably assume that the general consensus that we're looking at a bear was confirmed, although we're keeping our fingers crossed for a government cover-up. Those are always fun to figure out. There's also the fact that the creature was discovered in Shenzhen Reservoir in Sand Bay, China, which puts it well outside the chupacabra's established territory of the Americas and well within reach of the clutches of their military. It would be really cool if this thing turned out to be an Asian relative or counterpart to the South American chupacabras or the incredibly similar wendigos found further up north. The beast was found swimming around in the reservoir and was rescued by Department of Drainage workers. The ideas that it could be a bear are based around the fact that the little guy might have alopecia or some other issue that led to all of its fur falling out. Many locals in the area have also suggested that it could be some sort of Chinese water monster of legend. Whatever this thing is, we hope it's been given its shots by now. Number 1. Pygmy Ewoks. While not technically a cryptid, this is what comes to mind in this next clip that seems to show a miniature humanoid creature briefly coming into view before retreating quickly into the brush and away from prying eyes. Could be that this thing is an imp as well. Imps are said to be mischievous cousins of nymphs and dryads, although most experts claim that they're able to tell them apart fairly easily. This little guy is obviously a little more rotund than most descriptions of imps, which makes that a less likely scenario. While biking along a dirt track, a guy's seen pulling up to one of his friends who's fallen. They quickly point out that there's something strange on the track ahead, and as the helmet cam is raised, we get a quick glimpse of a small figure that then takes off running in the opposite direction. Not about to let his quarry get away that easily, the biker then guns it and tries to give chase. It's obvious that the small creature knows the area well, and the tall grass alongside the track makes for perfect cover. After a brief search, the biker's friends finally catch up and begin to fan out on foot in an attempt to locate whatever it was they saw. Either their prey was really good at hiding, or just too quick for them because it manages to effectively elude the group of searchers and they end up coming up empty-handed. The most likely explanation here is one that most people seem to be agreed upon, but is still fairly out there. It turns out that groups of pygmies live in and around the area, with many being reclusive, doing whatever they can to avoid people. Even though many of these tiny people shy away from modern civilization, they appear to make use of modern amenities such as clothing. Their miniature size would give them an absolute advantage when trying to avoid other people, making escape easy if they were, say, accidentally surprised by a group riding motorbikes. They would also very much resemble a small animal on two legs if you only caught a small glimpse and weren't immediately sure what you were looking at. We still think it'd be a lot more fun to say we ran into an Ewok, but it's not every day that modern man crosses paths with these rare pygmies, so it would still make for quite a story at the end of the day. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Being immersed in nature can be a wonderfully relaxing experience most of the time. That peace can be shattered quite quickly, however, if you happen across any number of wild animals that are known to snack on humans. With that in mind, these 5 creatures you don't want to run into in the wild are worth keeping an eye out for and avoiding at all costs. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Saltwater crocodile. Known to many simply as salties, these crocodiles are considered to be the largest of all living reptiles and are also seen as living dinosaurs. Their habitat is mostly located around India and Southeast Asia, with Australia also being a hotbed for saltwater crocodile activity. They're found in many different environments, with some exceeding 20 feet in length and larger specimen routinely weighing well over 2 tons. Add their less than appealing demeanor to these numbers, and you've got one hell of a fearsome predator, as well as an animal that's not to be trifled with under any circumstances. The good news is that the females are usually smaller than the males, although their temperament is no less vicious. So you should hope to run into a female if you're gonna be out in croc territory, which would at least give you a bit of a fighting chance. Usually found along smaller rivers and swamps instead of out in the ocean proper, these crocs are very territorial and will take on anything silly enough to wander into what they consider to be their feeding grounds. They're also classified as hyper-carnivorous predators, meaning they'll chomp down on anything they feel like, even taking on smaller species of crocodiles or resorting to cannibalism, happily eating smaller specimens of their own species. They prefer to sneak up on unsuspecting prey before drowning them and eating them whole. Their massive jaws snap down with such incredible force that it's nearly impossible to pry them open again. Once you've been snatched by a salty, there's really not much you can do other than hope for the best. They've been known to even win bouts with sharks, easily dominating and subduing them. We don't know about you, but we think that anything able to take on a shark and come out on top is worthy of our respect and fear. It goes without saying that these crocs kill plenty of people each year, with some individuals seemingly getting a taste for human flesh and being classified as man-eaters, which is a serious issue for anyone unlucky enough to live in the area. Many of these man-eaters are hunted down and killed, but many more are able to continue to hunt with reckless abandon, especially in more rural areas where mounting a search party is difficult. The saltwater crocodile has been around in its current form for at least 4 million years, making it not only one of the most fearsome predators on the planet, but also one of the oldest, with no known subspecies to speak of. Number 4. Brown recluse spider. And so we move from one of the world's largest deadly animals to one of the world's smallest. The deadly brown recluse spider is less impressive than saltwater crocodiles, but is no less worrisome, as their toxic venom is known to have necrotic properties. Basically, a bite from one of these little guys will result in your skin literally being eaten away as you watch. They're also known as Sicariidae, presumably named after the religious zealot terrorists known as the Sicarii. They're teeny tiny creatures, not often exceeding 2 centimeters across, but can grow larger in some circumstances. Their color doesn't necessarily have to be brown, leading many people to think that they must be harmless, only to realize too late that the white or gray spider they just encountered was, in fact, a brown recluse. Their name is fitting, however, with regard to their habitat, with the brown recluse very much being reclusive, which is good news for most of us who will probably never run into one of these things in the wild. Unlike most spiders, they only have 6 eyes, which is uncommon but not particularly unheard of. When alarmed, they get into a pouncing position and remain motionless instead of running away. When threatened, however, they usually do turn and run, preferring to avoid conflict despite their impressive bites. Cool, damp places are their preferred hangouts, with wood piles and cellars being two spots that they're generally found in. What makes their bite so troublesome is that it usually isn't painful to begin with most victims being unaware that they were even bitten in the first place. Not all bites feature necrosis, but those few that do cause very serious issues, requiring patients to be hospitalized for further treatment. Some bites even lead to systemic symptoms, even affecting the central nervous system in a low percentage of incidents. Even though the chances of having a severe reaction are low, organ failure or even death can occur if those serious bites aren't immediately treated, making them worth avoiding at all costs. When necrotizing bites do cause ulcers, it can wreak havoc on the surrounding soft tissue of your skin and take months to heal, leaving incredibly deep and painful scars, with some bites causing wounds as large as 10 inches across. Gangrene is another issue and can get out of hand within a week or so if left untreated. Number 3. Box jellyfish. Known as one of the most deadly jellyfish in the entire world, the box jellyfish is a fearsome opponent to anyone who accidentally runs into one. They're named because of their medusae, which form a cube. Their venom is highly potent and toxic, with their stings being so painful that many swimmers succumb to their effects before they even reach the shore. These jellyfish are able to move at a decent clip, much faster than other jellyfish species, propelling themselves along at up to 6 meters per minute on a regular basis, which is nothing to laugh about considering how dangerous they can be. When startled, they're able to move even faster, reaching speeds of up to 2 meters per second. They even have actual eyes and a significantly developed central nervous system, allowing them to respond to external stimuli and move towards perceived prey. This makes them much more likely to sidle up against you if you happen to be within close proximity to them, with some swimmers saying that they get a sense that the jellyfish were able to follow them around, a particularly unnerving realization. With a total of 24 eyes, they're definitely not worth getting close to. It should be noted that they can't really make out images, but are able to determine the difference between light and dark, which helps to guide them. They can easily avoid obstacles and engage in quick swimming motions when on the hunt, exhibiting what some say is behavior they'd expect from fish, not jellyfish. Their hollow tentacles can reach up to 3 meters long, with the entire jellyfish weighing up to 4.5 pounds. The fact that they actually actively hunt instead of simply drifting, coupled with their potent venom, makes them a particularly tricky adversary. Not all box jellyfish are a threat to humans, but Australia seems to have a large concentration of those that are, with their venom making individual cells in the human body swell and become porous, leaking potassium. This can lead to massive heart failure and death in as little as 5 minutes from the point of contact. Despite their deadliness, only 64 deaths have been attributed to the box jellyfish in Australia since 1883, but they are undoubtedly able to kill children or the infirm with surprising swiftness. The Malay Peninsula sees many more deaths, with up to 40 people dying each year after being stung. A zinc antivenom has been developed, lessening the danger to those in the first world as long as they maintain their vigilance. Stings can be initially treated with vinegar to neutralize their toxin and prevent further spread of nematocysts, followed by a trip to the hospital just in case. Chemicals on our skin cause the venom to activate, with pantyhose actually being a realistic way to protect oneself while in the water. Number 2. Scorpionfish. These fish have one hell of a nasty sting, injecting venom through needle-sharp spines located on the fish's back. These spines are coated with a mucus that houses the venom, injecting it under the skin as the spines puncture and dig deeper. They're quite brightly colored, with many divers saying they look quite pretty up close. They each have anywhere between 11 and 17 spines that are all capable of causing intense pain and, in some circumstances, death. They're ambush predators, lying in wait until unsuspecting prey comes within striking distance. They're also capable of herding certain fish, shrimp, or crabs into a corner before chomping down, suggesting that they do have some intelligence. Once cornered, the fish rapidly expands its buccal cavity, creating a powerful vacuum that allows them to literally suck prey into their open mouths, swallowing them up quite rapidly. These fish are considered to be invasive, and many countries around the world engage in mass culls of scorpionfish to help protect native species, as well as swimmers or divers. They're not toxic to eat, assuming you don't get stung in the process of gutting and cleaning them, with their flesh being thoroughly edible, although it's definitely far from a delicacy. Their habitat is usually around coral reefs, with their coloring helping them to blend in with the rocks and corals around them. They're also mostly found in the Indian and South Pacific Oceans, although rising global ocean temperatures have seen them migrate quite far afield in recent years. With over 200 known species, there's a lot of diversity when it comes to scorpionfish, but all of them are able to cause pain with their venom. While not particularly deadly to people, their sting causes intense pain in anyone unlucky enough to be pricked, with some swimmers dying from complications arising from that pain instead of their bodies succumbing to any particular poison. With a lifespan of 15 years, any scorpionfish introduced to a new ecosystem is easily able to take over and cause all sorts of problems in the long run. Number 1. Grizzly bear. The grizzly is a fearsome predator that's found in North America. It's worth noting that many scientists are now shying away from the term grizzly, instead referring to these bears as North American brown bears, which seems to downplay their viciousness just a tad. The grizzly has many distinct subspecies, also being known as the Kodiak bear, peninsular grizzly, and Mexican grizzly bear. They're found all over the place, with bears located along the coast generally being larger and more intimidating than their kin living further inland. Researchers have recently determined that the species made its way to North America around 50,000 years ago, with the US variants cropping up around 13,000 years ago. The scientists who use the term brown bear are referring to the fact that the modern grizzly is actually a subspecies of other brown bears found all over the world, meaning that it really shouldn't be classified as a separate species at all. That being said, they tend to be more ferocious than many known brown bear types, growing to a height of over 7 feet in some cases, also weighing up to 800 pounds or more. Coastal males dwarf their inland relatives, weighing in at a ridiculous 900 pounds on average. Some have even been recorded at over 1,500 pounds, although it's rare to see specimens that large on a regular basis. Grizzly bears were almost hunted to extinction at one time, with only around 1,500 to 2,000 estimated to be alive in the US as of 2013, according to one National Geographic study. They're more vicious and aggressive than the more populous black bear, which is why people hunted them so completely. Conservation efforts to save the species are currently well underway and seem to be making good progress year to year. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. The world has some incredible creatures that pose very unique challenges for hunters. Whatever your views on hunting, it goes without saying that it's a dangerous sport. A lot can go wrong, especially when dealing with unpredictable animals, and these 5 shocking moments caught on camera while hunting. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Chimp with AK. It seems to be legitimate and is downright terrifying, or absolutely hilarious depending on your point of view. This video has been watched countless times and is still a classic. It features a group of West African soldiers hanging out and having some fun while they sit in a circle. They're all engaging with a chimp who stumbled into their midst, checking in on what all the fuss is about. It seems that one of the guys has the bright idea to give a rifle to the chimp and see how it handles the weapon. He tells his friend, who quickly decides that he's onto something. He happily hands his weapon over while everyone laughs and continues to have one hell of a good time. The chimp takes the weapon, an AK, complete with a loaded magazine, and brandishes it the same way the soldiers do. They get a real kick out of this, with one of the guys pretending to unload his own weapon towards the chimp, shifting the muzzle back and forth in a spraying motion. After the joke wears off, the chimp decides to shoulder the rifle and begin mimicking the soldiers, moving the muzzle of its own weapon from side to side. The guys then begin to get a little uneasy, with all of them now on their feet and getting ready to run for cover. It seems they realized a little too late that the rifle was loaded with its safety off when it was handed over. Knowing that it has these guys beat, then proceeds to pull the trigger and release a volley that continues as the entire group of soldiers run for their lives. The guy with the camera drops behind a barrel and trains it back on the chimp, revealing the victor standing on its own with the rifle still clutched in its hands. It circles around, taking in its surroundings and all the mayhem it caused, before raising the rifle above its head in a hilarious display of bravado. Seems we're not so different from our chimp relatives after all, with this group of soldiers now knowing exactly why you shouldn't give one a loaded, fully automatic rifle. It's a miracle that nobody was hurt, although we're sure this isn't the only time this has happened. The fact that the footage does seem to be from 20th Century Fox's research library does make us think that it could possibly be staged, but a thorough review of the video hasn't revealed anything to make us overly suspicious, except for the fact that the cameraman is stupidly brave. If this is a hoax, it's a pretty good one, and we have to say that it really made our day. The soldiers might beg to disagree, but we can assume that if this incident was real, they were able to laugh about it later once the smoke had settled. Number 4, Bow Hunter. This big game hunter probably should have taken more than a bow with him when he decided to take on a lioness in Africa. Then again, he's a pretty good shot and probably knew what he was doing. His buddy hanging out with a rifle to take the angry predator down is a solid call when it comes to having a proper defense, but we think that trying to take down a lion with a bow only to have it charge you with no signs of any real injury isn't much of a win in the greater scheme of things. We get that bow hunters like to take on big game, but when they put themselves in harm's way like that, we'd expect them to be good enough to not need to use those guns. Just seems like cheating. We say that if you can't take the lion out with an arrow, then the lion gets to take you out instead. It would definitely add an extra element to the sport, and also make it a lot more sportsmanlike in the process. At the end of the day, if you need a rifle, just use a rifle. If you really want to use both, by all means, use both, but we say you've got to carry and use both weapons yourself, instead of copping out and bringing Daryl along with you as a spotter. These guys really had all the advantages here, which makes their trophy less impressive, with their outing being, in our minds, a glorified day of mudding and tailgating. Maybe we're being a little harsh here. It does look like the hunters were skilled, and we do have to applaud Buddy for landing that arrow, but nobody should really expect to down a lion with a bow without getting more than a few stitches in the process. That being said, we'd be frozen in fear if we were in the same situation, with an angry predator sprinting in our direction. These guys stayed cool, calm, and collected throughout, which earns them spot number 4 on today's countdown. Number 3, Buffalo won't stay down. When you go hunting buffalo, it takes a lot to bring them down and keep them down for good. These hunters learned just how fearsome a wounded animal can be when they approached a buffalo they thought was too wounded to fight back. They approach cautiously, not wanting to get too close, with the group probably being aware of the danger they're in ahead of time. That doesn't make what happened next any less surprising or terrifying, however, as the buffalo still has enough energy in it to make their day a complete nightmare. The animal is lying there, wounded and confused, not knowing what hit it. As it looks around, it turns towards the group of hunters who are slowly creeping closer, realizing that they're coming to take it out. The buffalo decides it isn't ready to go down without a fight, turning with surprising speed despite its incredible size, and standing with a grunt to make a last-ditch effort to save its own life, charging with reckless abandon. The hunter takes a shot, which doesn't faze the beast at all, and then another. After a couple of hits like that, you'd expect the buffalo would drop, but it just keeps charging, going down only a foot or two away from the lead hunter. If the third shot hadn't fully taken the buffalo down, one at long range and two up close, he almost certainly would have been impaled, trampled, or both, making that guy amazingly lucky to still be able to walk at that point. His stock still stance, with his legs spread, wound up tight and ready for anything, says it all once the buffalo finally stops moving and falls to the ground, with nobody saying anything at all for a few seconds as they recover from their shock. Eventually, one of the group begins to laugh, sending the rest of them into a nervous giggle. We bet their hearts were racing at that point, and the guy with the gun barely reacts to his friends as he stares at that buffalo intently, making sure it's actually down for the count. Turns out that the beast was actually hit 5 times before the group approached, meaning it had a ton of fight left in it despite being in no shape to do much other than lie there. The first shot after the charge supposedly hit it on the nose, glancing off its face, with the final shot having to land between its eyes to finally drop the massive creature. This just goes to show that big game hunting can go wrong very quickly if you're not prepared for the worst. Number 2, Lion Charge. The following footage was taken by a group of lion hunters who are stalking a lion they've already hit once. The animal isn't ready to give up just yet, with one shot not being enough to take it down. Knowing that it doesn't have many options left and that the hunters are catching up, the lion decides to bait them, keeping them on the chase until it can lure them into an area with a little more cover. It then stops, ready to make a final stand, roaring a warning to the hunters, signaling that it's had enough of being the prey. The group knows that this is a sign that the animal's ready to lash out, and they know that they're actually being hunted as well at this point. They get down on a knee and raise their rifles collectively, watching and waiting for any sign of the wounded but still wildly dangerous lion. The lion bides its time for a few seconds before tearing out of the bush, running headlong at one of the group members. It charges through a volley of rifle shots, barely missing a beat as the bullets seem to simply bounce off of it. It's finally taken down mid-leap, mere milliseconds before tearing into one of the hunters. It's a terrifying moment, as he was almost a goner. If that last bullet hadn't landed perfectly, he would have ended up being torn to bits. As it was, the lion basically landed on top of him as it succumbed to its wounds, with the guy only barely getting out of the way as the beast crashed down and ceased to move. The killing shot was actually landed by the guy being charged, and it turns out he hadn't even shouldered his weapon, instead firing from the hip and hoping for the best. That's one hell of a safari story, with that incident almost being lights out for both the lion and the hunter. Number 1, bear trouble. We're wrapping up today's countdown with another bow hunter taking on some serious game. This time it's a bear instead of a lion, which we think is even more ridiculous. A lion is tough and has some serious speed and power, but a bear's hide is incredibly thick and they can crush a skull with one lazy swipe, making this an inadvisable activity. The guy with the bow ends up hitting the bear a few times before the pair accidentally give their position away, alerting the bear to their presence. It finally decides it's had enough and charges the pair, circling around to get a good run at the hunters. They yell at the bear to try to scare it away, but at this point it knows they're after it and realizes that it has a life or death choice to make. A rifle shot finally downs the beast, with it landing only feet away from the group of hunters. This was a very sticky situation and would have been game over if not for that perfect shot. We're sure that the two had this situation under control, but it's worth noting that even one misstep or mistake could very easily have been the end of any of these hunters, with big game hunting carrying some very real dangers for those involved. That bear is enormous, with its claws basically being the size of that guy's head. We have to give these guys kudos for having the balls to hit a bear with a bow repeatedly from such close range and living to tell the story. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you. Everest has captured our imaginations for The animal kingdom is fierce and governed by one rule: survival of the fittest. When two top predators go head to head, the result can be spectacular, albeit terrifying at times. These 5 craziest animal fights caught on camera and spotted in real life are sure to impress and amaze you. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Lion versus tiger. Both of these contenders are masters of their domains and can really throw down when they need to. This is probably one of the most impressive fights that can happen between two land-based predators, at least as far as we're concerned, and we managed to find incredible footage of a full-on battle between these two ferocious hunters just for you. Both lions and tigers hunt predominantly at nighttime, so it should come as no surprise that this fight happened in the dark. Even though the lion is much larger than the tiger, the match is pretty even throughout. The tiger's agility is definitely a benefit here, and it also seems to have more stamina than the bulky lion. After a brief tussle, they separate and play a game of cat and mouse, if you will, before diving back into it again. The lion does seem to do more of the chasing, with the tiger dancing circles around its rival and climbing out of range from time to time. During round 2, the lion shows its real strength and manages to remain dominant. The tiger, however, however, is one hell of a tough competitor and does a good job landing some solid hits and remaining mobile. At around the halfway point, the tiger regains its momentum and manages to pin the larger cat multiple times. Its adapted strategy involving attacking from behind and clawing the lion's back seems to be a winning combination. Round 2 ends with both fighters taking a break and regaining their composure, before the lion suddenly leaps at the tiger as it rests on its side, signaling the start of round 3. Once again, the two cats go at it, with the lion eventually managing to strike a final blow to the side of the tiger's head. This knockout punch sends the tiger to the ground, this time for good. The really disturbing part about this video comes at the end. After the lion takes the tiger down, it doesn't actually land a killing blow, but just walks around. Later, we see the tiger getting dragged up the bank by a rope, making it clear that this was potentially a staged pit fight put on for the sake of people. Then again, it could just be that researchers decided to study the tiger's body or try to nurse it back to health after its brutal ordeal. Unfortunately, we haven't yet been able to find out which of these two possibilities actually played out, but we hope that this confrontation was a natural fight between two wild animals and not just entertainment for some seriously twisted individuals. Number 4. Snake versus Gecko. Our next match is definitely a natural one and actually seems surprisingly fair. Both fighters are able to get the upper hand on their opponent, and well, anything can happen when the two meet in close quarters combat. If you look closely, you can see that the gecko has already lost its tail, probably during a previous fight, marking it as a deadly scrapper despite its small size. It's also got some incredible tricks up its sleeve and knows how to take advantage of the snake's weaknesses. You can clearly see this ingenuity at work when it leaps onto the snake's back and rides it around like a rodeo bull. The snake, in turn, tries desperately to shake it, but has a hard time moving around with all that bulk attached. It may look like a fun ride, but it's really a life and death struggle to the bitter end, with the gecko using its sticky feet to hold on for dear life. Its next tactic is to bite the snake's lower jaw, preventing it from being able to land a solid bite or actually eat him. The snake, in turn, has only one move, and that's to repeatedly try to bite the gecko. Its hope is that the gecko will eventually bleed out and succumb to its toxic venom before the snake is too tired to continue. This venom actually thins out the blood, shortening the time it takes for its victims to bleed out. Unfortunately for the snake, the gecko is able to shut blood flow off to certain parts of its body to a certain extent, limiting the amount of blood loss over time. It's also seen using its padded sticky feet to hold itself firmly in place while the snake tries to dislodge it and drag it away. Eventually, the gecko's vice grip on the snake's jaw is too much for its opponent to bear, and its attacker lets go, slithering off into the jungle. The gecko, in the meantime, was very close to losing the fight. Their oxygen supply isn't enough to maintain that level of activity, as well as constrict its blood vessels enough to put up a struggle like that for too long. After a brief but intense bout, they both end up separating, with the more peaceful gecko retreating to a safe distance to properly recover after its deadly ordeal. We're sure that's not the last time it'll have to defend itself in such a grave situation, but that's the way things are when you're as far down the food chain as these two fighters are. Number 3. Cat versus Alligator. House cats can be quite intimidating when they're provoked, and many of us know just how quick their reflexes can be. While some cats choose to terrorize people with their specialty skill set, others choose to be protectors of mankind. The cat in this video is definitely of the latter persuasion, defending its territory and human friends like a boss. While the people in the area don't seem all that worried, probably because of the gator's smallish size, it's still a fairly dangerous situation to be in. If that gator were to sneak up on an unsuspecting person or pet, it would undoubtedly try to make off with a quick meal. That's where our guard cat comes in. Realizing that the gator isn't supposed to be there and poses a threat, the cat jumps into action and starts actively pestering the predator. The two stare each other down for a long time, with the cat refusing to budge. Its show of force was just what the situation required. The gator, after seemingly carefully considering the situation, retreats into the water, and you think that's that. Cat 1, gator 0. Turns out the reptilian interloper was just grabbing reinforcements. After a few seconds, we suddenly see another gator pop out of the water with its companion. The pair then begins advancing on the cat, trying again to intimidate it into fleeing from its post. The cat again refuses to budge, clearly marking the land around it as its territory. Eventually, the two unwanted guests wander back into the water and disappear beneath the surface. Now, that's something you don't see every day and makes for a great great camping story to bring home with you. The guy with the camera then comments that this cat is actually actively standing guard, making sure that nothing bad happens in the campsite, confirming what we already suspected. That is one badass feline. If you'd asked us at the start of the video what we thought would happen, we certainly would not have expected this outcome. Even though the gators in the video were relatively small, it would still be disconcerting to go camping next to so many of them, and we can assure you that we wouldn't be caught anywhere near that particular campsite, even with that cat wandering the premises. Then again, it would be a ton of fun to watch a guard cat take on a gator and convince it to wander off and bother someone else. Number 2. Octopus versus shark. Number 2 on our countdown takes place not on land, but in the water. Some of the largest and most terrifying predators that roam our planet are found in aquatic environments, making fights between ocean predators a potentially nasty business. This one involves an underdog and a heavyweight champ taking each other on, with incredibly surprising twists and turns along the way. While this match took place in an aquarium tank and not in the deep ocean, it doesn't make this altercation any less deadly. It's commonly known that this particular species of shark, the spiny dogfish shark, enjoys snacking on octopi from time to time in the wild, with the idea of the opposite occurring being a little far-fetched of an idea for most. This doesn't, however, mean the shark will always come out on top, especially when they choose to take on a giant Pacific octopus, which can grow to enormous sizes like the one in this video. They've got some serious strength in those massive tentacles and are able to latch onto the shark with a vice-like grip. The most surprising part of this video is that the shark didn't actually instigate the attack. Instead, the octopi in the tank were actively engaging with their natural enemies and killing them without any provocation. Aquarium staff captured this footage after they found that sharks in the tank were regularly dying with no apparent cause. After this discovery, they decided to do some sleuthing to find out what the cause was. We didn't expect the octopus to be the culprit, and we can be sure that aquarium staff were just as surprised as we were when they saw the fight for themselves. While giant Pacific octopi are immense creatures, certainly more than capable of defending themselves from attack, their aggressive tendencies towards sharks comes as a real shock. We know they're prone to being grumpy at times, but this is a relatively new take on octopi behavior and will definitely have to be studied further. Number 1. Python versus alligator. Our final animal fight is an incredible event. Burmese pythons, like the one featured here, have recently made their way to the Florida Everglades and were able to quickly assert their dominance over most predators that they found waiting for them. The alligators found in the Everglade were its top predators until very recently, and they enjoyed being at the top of the food chain for an amazingly long time. Human habitation and climate changes have driven these snakes from their usual habitats further south and have forced them to give the reigning champs of Florida wildlife, the gators, a run for their money. Because the snakes are new, the gators aren't used to fearing them as the deadly predators they are, allowing the snakes to approach the massive reptiles and get in position without causing any suspicion on the part of their prey. It's a little nuts to think that these two animals would try to take each other on, given the fact that there are a lot more food sources. Could be that they're fighting for territory or are in dire straits, however, which would make more sense. The larger alligators do have an advantage over most pythons, and their bite is insanely powerful. Anything caught between those jaws really wouldn't stand much of a chance. Unfortunately for the gators, their death roll really doesn't affect the snakes that much, removing another useful weapon from their arsenal. This fight took hours with no clear winner emerging, which is known to happen from time to time during these engagements. At a certain point, both of them simply give up and go their separate ways, leading to a somewhat anticlimactic end to what is still a fantastic fight between two top predators. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Stories of ghost ships have captured our attention for generations, with the following 5 ghost ships caught on camera and spotted in real life, including some real-life ghost ships and some that leave a little to be desired. The footage is quite spectacular, even if you don't quite buy into some of them being more than hoaxes. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Lake Superior Mirage. One video currently making the rounds is of a ghost ship sailing across Lake Superior. Commenters have been divided with regard to what this vision actually is. Some say that it's probably nothing more than a mirage, although many more have claimed that it can't be anything other than a ghost ship caught on camera. It definitely does look like some kind of sailboat, albeit a very large one. The video is quite mysterious and doesn't seem to have been altered at all. The sound is a little off, with the high winds taking front and center stage along with the mystery ship. It seems to glide gently across the screen and is certainly an eerie sight, no matter what explanation you believe is true. Nobody seems to have a realistic or scientific explanation other than the ship being a mirage, but we don't think it's quite that cut and dry. The high winds and rough seas could very easily have obscured an actual ship from view, making it look otherworldly when it's really just a little foggy. But so far, nobody's stepped up to claim ownership, and nobody seems to be able to locate a ship of that description. That being said, Lake Superior is pretty massive, so singling one particular ship out is bound to be a tricky business. The video was taken at Breakwater in Michigan, specifically around the Marquette area, and there's evidence that there's a ton of saltwater spray hanging in the air, which makes us believe that this image is just an actual ship that's been partially obscured and hidden from clear view by the less than optimal conditions. Jason Asselin is the man behind the video, and he said that he had to pull his camera out and film his encounter because he was sure that nobody would believe him otherwise. He's been quick to say that while he's still quite puzzled over the entire event, he's not quite ready to toss science out the window just yet. He says that the object was located miles offshore, quite a long ways out, which means that this ship would have been absolutely massive up close. He also discounted the idea of the ship being a mirage, much like we have, stating that the conditions would have had to have been perfect, which is clearly not the case. Some have mentioned a ship called the Bannockburn that sank way back in the 1800s and has supposedly been haunting Lake Superior's frigid waters ever since that time. No matter what their opinion on the subject, almost everyone who has seen this video says that it's an impressive sight, regardless of whether or not it's an actual ghost ship. We wouldn't mind seeing this for ourselves just to be sure, but we really can't discount the fact that this could be an actual glimpse of a ghost ship in real life, which we think would be pretty cool at the end of the day. Number 4. Holland America Line Shenanigans. The person who uploaded this video claims that it's irrefutable evidence that ghost ships are real, but we're not all that convinced. The footage is clear and they do get a great shot up close, but we think what they saw wasn't a ghostly vision at all. When the video starts, the person behind the camera seems to be on a fishing trip with a group of other people, with their rods set up and ready to go. Trawling is always a ton of fun, and this expedition doesn't seem to be out of the ordinary at all, until, that is, a massive cruise ship comes into view, of course. They're chatting about their day and plans to go fishing, saying that they're looking forward to the trip. It looks like they've opted to head out in the early morning, as the sun hasn't yet risen, and the camera looks like it's in night vision mode, with everything having an eerie green tint to it. A little ways in, you can see a massive ship outlined on the port side, slowly coming into view as they approach it. What initially made us think that this was a hoax is the fact that the crew seem very laid back about their ghost ship once it comes into view. Furthermore, you can clearly see the words Holland America Line printed along the side of the boat, which is a company that's very much still operating all over the world. The video says that the group was just off the Canary Islands, and we expect they were possibly weirded out by the fact that they're not used to seeing cruise ships in the area. You can also make out people aboard the ship as it pulls into port, which really isn't anything out of the ordinary. We figure this group is trying to have a little fun with us, and most commenters were left unimpressed, immediately calling this a hoax. We did some double checking to see if Holland America Line runs out of the Canary Island, which they very much do. That being the case, this video's almost certainly just a practical joke, with a group of fishermen having some fun with us. We can't help but wonder why they'd go out of their way to pull a stunt like this, and we're willing to admit that they could very well have seen something strange that we missed, leading them to believe that the ship wasn't of this world after all. The uploader, however, doesn't mention anything that we should be looking out for, and we expect that it's just a group of bored anglers that wanted to stir up some interest in their trip. We'd like to hear what you have to say about this particular tall tale, and we look forward to you leaving your own theories in the comments below. Number 3. Halifax Ghost Ship. Getting back to where we should be, this next video hails from Halifax, Nova Scotia, where gloomy and foggy conditions are a regular occurrence. It's clear that visibility wasn't very good on this particular day, and that conditions were perfect for creating ghostly illusions. Still images make this ship somewhat hard to see, but video footage perfectly captures the outline of what seems to be a tanker slowly making its way through the fog. Halifax is a port city that rests along the Atlantic Ocean and has all sorts of ghost ship stories to keep anyone who's interested in such things entertained for quite a long time. Many sailors leaving Halifax have been lost at sea, and ghost ships aren't considered to be out of the ordinary at all, especially with Halifax's long and storied history. We can't quite make out the markings on the side of the ship, which is a bit of a letdown because it would help us work out once and for all whether or not this is a real ghost ship or just another tanker sneaking by while being obscured by fog. One thing's for sure, and that's the fact that if this was a real ship, the captain must be exceptionally good at their job because we wouldn't be caught dead in conditions like that, especially on such a large ship. When visibility is so low, any number of minor mishaps could see all hands aboard being lost without anyone being the wiser. Over the course of a couple minutes, the ship slowly sails past the building to the left of the frame, slowly disappearing out of sight. Even if this isn't an actual ghost ship, it certainly looks the part and would be freaky for anyone watching it make its way past them on its way to wherever it happened to be headed. Tankers are a regular sight in Halifax, and we were unfortunately unable to find any other evidence to back this claim up, although we're willing to admit that it could very easily be a vision of something that's not actually physically there. The fact that it's moving so slowly makes the ship creepy enough in its own right, and we're willing to give this ghost ship sighting a little leeway, saying that we think it could be the real deal. Number 2. Ohio River Sighting. A group of kayakers came across this ship that's been an Ohio River derelict for over 30 years and definitely looks the part of a ghost ship. It was once a steam-powered monster that has definitely seen better days. It's over 100 years old at this point, and we initially assumed that it was run aground and abandoned after being made obsolete by more modern ships. After a little digging, we were able to determine that the ship was originally named the Celt and has a long and storied history to go along with it. First built in 1902, it was privately owned by a railroad magnate, but was eventually rented out by the US Navy. They took over the ship in 1917 and renamed it Sachem, which many mariners considered to be bad luck, although they've always been known to be overly superstitious. It seems like they didn't end up causing too much bad luck to befall the Sachem, as it served during both world wars quite admirably. It even underwent a third name change, finally being known as the USS Fenakite. Interestingly enough, Thomas Edison actually sailed about the Fenakite and used the ship to transport some of his experiments that were funded by the US government, which just adds more depth to its life. The scene is quite spectacular, and we think that coming across this monster would be quite a sight. It's been overrun by nature at this point, with the hull mostly rusted out and not much keeping the elements at bay these days. The kayaker who took this footage was James Mallet, and we're glad he decided to take the time to hop on board and take a look around the 186-footer. The ship maintains its vigil over its eventual gravesite, and we doubt it's going to be moved anytime soon, meaning you can head on over and take a look for yourself if you so choose. The location does seem pretty remote, and we can definitely imagine this ship conjuring up thoughts of ghosts and spectral sailors still standing watch. This makes it somewhere we'd be happy to avoid at night, when the creepiness factor would certainly get kicked up a notch. We don't get a good view of the insides of the ship, but that's probably for the best because we're sure it isn't the safest place to explore. Old tanks can even be seen below decks that have seemingly remained untouched for over 30 years, which only adds to the intrigue. Number 1. Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia was a cruise ship that capsized, forcing crew and passengers to abandon it and run for their lives to lifeboats. It ran aground in shallow water, and the teams who captured this footage mark the first step in its salvage attempt. It measured over 492 feet long and was done in after a 230-foot hole was torn into its side. The captain was eventually tried for abandoning ship while passengers were still aboard, as well as charges of manslaughter after passengers died due to his inability to perform his job. The ship remains exactly how it was when it went down, with images being quite chilling. The ship's final moments must have been filled with panic-stricken passengers, and our hearts go out to those who didn't make it. Divers can be seen making their way through the interior as they go about ensuring that the craft is ready to be eventually hauled out of the water, which is quite an immense undertaking, to say the least. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Parks feature more than their fair share of creepy events. The following 5 creepy things caught on camera in parks certainly fit the bill. These sightings range from the paranormal to the downright bizarre and everything in between. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Masked Weirdo. People are freaking out about clowns these days for no real reason. We're sure the original sightings were a little spooky, but it's degraded into a bunch of wannabes trying to feel important. We say it's time to stop getting creeped out by clown pretenders, after this next one anyway, who has less of a desperate air about him and seems more like someone who would beat you down before taking your wallet, your phone, and your keys just for the sake of it. This video was posted on YouTube by a couple of guys who ran into a pretty awkward clown. While they might be brave, that mask has "hell no" written all over it. The best we could come up with was that this guy's high or drunk, or both. We think the fact that he isn't getting all done up to freak people out is even more terrifying than some guy in a clown suit. It's obvious this guy isn't really following any trend here, which makes him straight up creepy as hell. You gotta be some kind of loose cannon to toss a mask on and walk around in public at nighttime. Our rule when encountering strange men in dark pants is to quickly and quietly get out of there, especially if they have that crackhead vibe about him. This dude ticks all the boxes, so Buddy with the camera would be on his own before he ever got a clear shot. Good thing for him, his friend is a little more loyal because, well, if he was on his own, he might not have captured this footage before running in the other direction. Then again, even they can't take it after a certain point. After the guy notices our 2 videographers huddled together for safety, he begins staggering towards them. That's when they decide they've had enough, with one of them saying they should bolt if he gets any closer. He then shuffles a little closer, and the guys realize he's definitely got a bead on him. The video then cuts off